Welcome to Being Human in the Age of AI, the Coaching Lens. I'm your host, Deborah Grant, and today's guest is Carrie Hollack, a technology leader and founder of CHollack Consulting. Carrie brings years of experience in enterprise systems, application integration, and HR technology, and a thoughtful perspective on what responsible AI adoption really requires. We'll also talk about Ascend 2026, the OHUG and OHUG co-sponsored annual conference recently in June 2026 for Oracle users, and explore how AI is changing businesses everywhere. Join us now as we discuss why organizations should invest in adaptable people, not just hire for tasks that technology will inevitably be performing. Carrie Hollack, it is so great to have you on my new podcast, which is Being Human in the Age of AI, the Coaching Lens. You're one of the people that I wanted as the first of the batch, which you are, because of so many reasons, but we've worked together before in podcasting for OHUG, and you are on the board of OHUG, the Oracle HCM Users Group, which I'm a member of now. So we still have carried our connection on to the next phase, and so it's so good to see you again. But when we begin our conversation today, which will probably be pretty much on the long side, because when you and I get going, we travel through a lot of different topics. But tell everyone how you got to where you are in your career. You have a consulting company called CHollack Consulting, and you've been in tech for a very long time, probably before many women were in tech. Isn't that right? And so give us a little rundown and then also what you do now. So go for it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And you're right. I actually started in technology a little bit before Y2K. So that was a really exciting time to start. It was also a time of kind of a lot of fear about some of the things with Y2K. If you remember, is this system going to stop? And what does that mean for the world? And, there was just a kind of a lot of things around what seems like it's just a couple extra digits, right? But, that was kind of where I kicked off there as a woman in technology who did not have a programming background, but kind of got up to speed as I went along, learned and tried a couple different industries and a couple different functional focuses, all still in technology, but supporting different kinds of companies and things like that. Started as a consultant and then joined a grocery store chain as an employee where I really got into high volume retail, which ended up being something I'm enthusiastic about today. I've stayed in high volume retail ever since those grocery days. And the reason initially at this grocery store, a very, very large company and weekly payroll that failed a lot. And I just loved putting out fires. I really, found it fulfilling to have a problem and be able to solve it. And it felt exciting. It felt heroic, was a little bit of scary, but I think luckily enough, I was successful enough that, I had that adrenaline rush and came out feeling good. And so I kind of remembered that. And the challenges in high volume retail just kind of grew and grew as I went further on in my career. So, it started with just not being able to get payroll finished in a night. And it ended up, talking about a lot more complicated things within high volume retail, whether it's, scheduling folks or how you bring them throughout your organization. I was lucky enough to work at Nordstrom as well as an employee. And, they definitely value the salesperson over the C-level folks. So they have an inverted pyramid is what they call it. So they embrace servant leadership. And
That's
it
right.
is very
Yeah.
important. Yeah, yeah.
I
They're kind
remember
of
now. Yeah.
right. And so yeah, they love when salespeople or folks that work in different capacities in the stores end up coming into corporate and bringing that lens. And I remembered that when I first joined Nordstrom, we sat in some kind of business process sessions talking about whatever. I don't remember the topic, but what I do remember is that there was someone in the room who was in corporate and had just left the stores within the past couple months. And people in corporate were talking about the business process and here's what it is. And this person from the store said, "Yeah, we don't do it that way." It was like this big realization that everyone in corporate had told them to do it that way and
Uh-huh.
thought that they did it that way. And the person in the stores was like, "Yeah, we don't, and here's why." And that was
Mhm.
like this big realization for me where, you can tell someone what to do, and at the end of the day, they're out there. And in high volume retail or in other areas, whatever it is, have customers coming at you, you have demand, you have different stakeholders. At the end of the day, you're trying to do your work. And if corporate or if someone tells you you need to do it in a certain way and that doesn't support you getting your things done the way that you need to do them with quality and with speed, you're going to find a way around it. And
Mm-hmm.
the corporate folks can raise their fists and say, "Why are they doing this?" Well,
Yeah.
they're doing it because it's better. And so having that feedback loop, being really connected to
Mm-hmm.
people instead of sitting on high and telling them what to do is just a really important thing that has stuck with me. And so I'm really drawn to companies that value that and kind of shorten that feedback loop so that they can more quickly
Mm-hmm.
adjust to the folks that actually need it. We need to support those folks that are the hourly people doing their jobs.
So today, what are the kinds of projects you're working on these days now?
Yeah, all kinds of different stuff. So it can run the gamut from, I get really excited about efficiencies and doing things kind of better with less. And so let me think of a good story here. Uh, that tends to be what I focus on, but we also have this draw of business initiatives and functionality that we need to push out, and it ends up being a bit of a balancing act, right, between all those different demands of are you pushing out things that are flashy and I shouldn't say flashy, things that, work well and drive different business functions in different ways. But then the speed at which you're pushing that out can be challenging because often a lot of these companies are very established. And so a lot of the systems and processes they have in place are there 10, 20 plus years, right? And so there's
Mm-hmm.
this kind of change of how do you bring out this new stuff and you're using new technologies, but you're trying to integrate that with existing things that, I mean, they could even be on the mainframe in extreme cases. I mean, I'm not currently working on anything like that, but I have where,
Mm-hmm.
you're pushing out stuff with newer technologies, but you still, at the end of the day, maybe you're running compensation off a mainframe and you have to have all these things working in conjunction. And, it's kind of easy to say, well, let's rewrite the code on the mainframe, but maybe it turns out that you don't have the source code or you can't reverse engineer. I mean, it's harder than it sounds and it's working. What's it doing? I don't know, but it's right. That type of thing. But at the end of the day, you still got to do stuff to move forward. So I kind of love balancing those conversations and figuring out how
Mm-hmm.
you can push out new things, from a code perspective. I mean, push out
Yeah.
new and new functionality and whatnot, but at the same time not get anchored down by things that are there and are there for a very good reason, established
Right.
things and figuring that out, but they could take a lot of your time.
This would probably deserve a whole show because that whole piece, you're talking customer service and a lot of, whether it's internal or external, that we're not ready for some of this technology sometimes. So the bane of my existence, I've said more than once, is bad customer service that we're getting through AI and automated little pieces that just are totally off base, don't work at all for the customer, and that it's probably hurting a lot of businesses. I don't know that they've fully done the analyses that they would need before they even start one of these, new apps or whatever that they're picking because they don't work.
Yeah.
And so we're sitting there on the phone just pulling our hair out, and then it gets sent to the call center, and the call center doesn't have the information. They send you back to the wrong number in the US. And I literally can take an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours. I don't know if you have a trick for how to avoid that. I don't think we probably all are
Not
suffering,
always.
right?
Yeah. No, you're
We're
right.
all suffering. And so I think a lot of companies need you right now to fix that. But maybe you can, because I'm interested in what you were talking about. I'm not a computer scientist, not even a smidgen, but the concept of what you talked about with all of the different pieces of technology, I think would really interest a lot of people, and how you would go about solving some of that with the benefit of human beings in mind who are on the tail end of all of that, especially in retail and in public facing, consumer facing businesses. I don't think, at least maybe it has, but I'm not aware of those conversations. Are they being held as much as they should be? I'm not sure that they are. What's on top of your mind right now regarding AI?
Yeah, it's all over the place because it changes so constantly, right? But,
Okay.
at the conference that did help speak to a lot of different people that are in different places. And
Mm-hmm.
the thing most interesting to me was that, we had a lot of AI content this year and a lot of AI discussions. We
Yeah.
also had a lot of AI 1 year ago and looking at the delta, the difference between how people
Ah,
feel and what they know about AI this year versus last year was kind of surprising. A year ago when we said, well, how many people are actively using AI, right? Raise a hand. There weren't that many hands. Now this year, it would be rare to not have a hand up. Everyone
wow.
is using AI in some way. Now I'm talking
Hmm.
about a person using AI though. I'm not necessarily talking about in their job. And that
Hmm.
is a bit of a difference as that's changing, as you know, right? I mean,
Yeah.
employers, organizations are trying to figure this out and they're trying to balance like you need AI to be competitive. You have to. I mean, that's
Hmm.
really just a fact.
Yeah.
You also have to figure out your governance around AI and what that means to the people in your organization and how do they move faster with AI? How does that partnership work? And you hear stories about a lot of people being laid off, because of AI, and you hear other stories about
Hmm.
I think it was IKEA not long ago that had AI change people's jobs. So it could have removed people. But they ended up saying, well, instead, these folks who were maybe taking orders or chatting or, whatever they were doing, now that AI is doing that, these guys have the opportunity to do more recommendation and design work and just kind of move them into a different type of role, which is the type of story that I'm excited to see
I
where,
love to hear those stories.
right?
Yes, yes, I had a couple of discussions with people like, why don't we see more of that? So I'm so glad to hear, and honestly, not quite surprised that it's a Swedish company that's doing it.
So true.
So they are often the leaders of this kind of thinking, right? Is remember all your people, think about all of your talent, not just pieces of it, but and
Exactly.
moving things around is a very Japanese thing. I was talking to somebody about that they would, that was less so these days, but the lifelong employment system where you just didn't fire anyone. I mean, they would have to have done something really horrible to be moved out of the company. So they would just move people around every so often. Often it was 2, 3, 4 years, sometimes 5, 10 even. They would move you into something completely different, completely new, do the training, understand that that was new for the person, and then by the end, they really saw the leaders that emerged out of that had an understanding of the entire company. So, so then they would know how to talk to so and so in the sales department, or, they would talk to the people right on the ground, knowing because they had done those roles. It was that kind of thing that I grew up with that, observing that within the Japanese community. But to hear that they're doing it now, because this is a good solution, right? It's a good
It is.
solution for what's going on.
Absolutely. And, I think you're right that it expresses, are companies hiring people because they're good people and they're learners and they're excited to do things, or are they hiring them to get a task done? Because the task can be done
Exactly.
by AI in a lot of cases. And it is different. The first company that I worked for out of college, actually, um, they hired for the person. And so what I was hired for, a computer programming job, and I was a math major. I had taken two computer classes in college, and I hated them. Hated computer. I had to do it to fulfill my major, and I thought I wasn't good at it. And I don't love things I'm not good at unless I'm excited about it. So I interviewed with this company, and this was long back. You couldn't really find out that much about them on the internet. I didn't know what they did, so I interviewed with them. Loved them. Loved the people at the company. We connected. We were at the end of the interview, and I'm like, ah, this sounds really great. Well, like, what would I be doing if I worked here? Because oddly enough, we hadn't talked about that. I mean, I was a new college grad.
Hmm.
They probably figured they'd have to train me up no matter what. And they said, oh, it's a programming job. And I just turned white. I was like, I don't know if I want to do that. I don't think I like computer programming. And what they said to me was, well, why don't you give it a try? You know,
Ah,
like you like us, we like you. Try it. If you don't like it, go somewhere else. And I was like, I mean, they're not wrong, right? Like,
yeah.
not. I think I don't like this, but I know I like them. So let's do it. And so they hired me, and I soon learned that they tended to hire folks that didn't have a lot of experience. They either had an associate's degree in programming or they had maybe a bachelor's in history or something like that. And so it was such an interesting blend of people that all
Hmm.
brought different perspectives, and it's very diverse, both with age, gender, background, like all kinds of things. And it was a very cool company to start out with. Not all companies are that way, but they were pretty special. Referring back to the Ascend conference this year, the joint
Hmm.
conference with OHUG and OHUG, again, lots of talk about AI, and specifically, some of it was about how folks are using AI in their organization and in what way they're technically putting it in and managing it, really. So, both the implementation of it and the governance of it and the balance there. And
Mm-hmm.
something that I've found within the Oracle space specifically is that it's been a much quicker adoption for companies to have AI functionality that's built within a packaged product from the
Mm-hmm.
vendor. So in this
Mm-hmm.
case, Oracle applications where they're building AI functionality within their product,
Mm-hmm.
that's a much quicker path to adoption for a lot of organizations than taking standalone AI agents that can definitely work across all kinds of technologies and systems, but introduce a lot of governance questions and put a lot of burden on the organization who's implementing it to kind of stress test it and make sure that all's going well when it's
Mm-hmm.
across everything, versus much easier sell internally to say, hey, no, the vendor's got it in their packaged app, right? They're rolling this out. We can absolutely flip on these AI agents, and whether it's, a very easy example of a chat bot for somebody who wants to change their benefits, something like that, to on the other end of the spectrum where it is orchestrating across those business processes that do live within that ecosystem of the Oracle application in that case.
Mm-hmm.
Again, you can absolutely extend it outside those systems, but it does become just a little bit more challenging for organizations to take that on and accept that, as they're still, candidly, they're still in some cases building out their governance of what that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
People want to use AI. They do. And they also don't want to, have anything go wrong with it. And so there's a bit of a caution with that. So I thought it was exciting to see that Oracle and many other vendors are building AI agents and orchestration within their own product in a way that people can take advantage so quickly. And they're pushing this out so fast. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's really amazing. And in some cases you can use it or not. And we played with some of it a little bit in one of the hands-on lab sessions there with some of the just a simple chatbot they had within HR itself. And we chatted with it, asked about our vacation balance, and then said, oh, okay, well, with all that time, where could I go? Give me some ideas. Here's what I like. And we found that just this internal chatbot actually would build a trip itinerary for you as well. So not just kind of querying the stuff within the Oracle ecosystem, but in that regard, it works beyond, which is a cool employee experience in and of itself, really, for an
Mm-hmm.
employee to be able to use it in that way. Again, I'm thinking about in some cases too, an hourly employee or, someone like that who can sit down and get all that rich information just out of their employer's system where they're logging in to, again, check their benefits or add a dependent or something like that. Kind of cool.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot. It's a lot going on. So what else did you all talk about at Ascend in terms of AI and the differences, let's say, compared to last year?
Yeah, so much. So again, beyond the adoption of just everyone using it personally and in all these different ways, we did talk about kind of implementing new systems and doing workshops and whatnot, and how AI can jumpstart a lot of that. So, at this conference, there are a lot of system implementers, the folks who talk about putting in a new module or putting in a new system and whatnot. And so that was part of the conversation, is that, as a company, you buy a new product, a technical product, and it takes X amount of time to get that live. And that X amount of time, I mean, we're talking months, years for these, ERP applications and things like that. So they talked about just even already, so not potential, but even already, how they're speeding up discovery sessions just tenfold by, discovery, when you sit down and kind of figure out like what is current state, what do things look like
Mm-hmm.
before you start talking about future state. That's just a common way to do things, and fruitful. And so instead, they're just dumping all of this information in. So whereas, 2 years ago, you would have, I don't know, 30 people in rooms for hours, kind of talking about and getting all this information out of them. And then they're
Mm-hmm.
going back and trying to find that spreadsheet that they left on their computer, that Visio, that, all that stuff. They can just dump all that, just dump it all, just push it at AI and say, take this, take this and tell us what our world looks like. And it can just spit it out. I mean, it's amazing, right? It's amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. I confess. So I've been using it a lot in my new business,
Oh,
which is going to be some business development, some coaching, some team coaching, individual coaching, writing, podcasting. So there's a lot of different elements to the business. And the lead generation portion, it was astounding what I could just sit and do and start throwing things at it, put in all of my spreadsheets that I ever got from wherever I own of contacts or even emails or whatever. And then it would start doing the data assessment in terms of the themes. Basically, it's like looking for the core themes and issues of whatever kind of content it is. It's pretty incredible. It really is.
That is wild.
I don't think I could have done what I'm doing now the same way at all without it. It would have taken more people. I can do most of it on my own in a fraction of the time that I would normally spend. And what's more, it's fun. It's more fun than I've ever had at work, really, in a long time. I would say, except for maybe my radio production days or when I first started working in Japan, where everything was new. Compared to that, I feel like I've sort of returned to those days in a way. And yet I know that we're having to be considerate about the use of it and so on. I heard that Europe is more open to AI in a way than the United States. What are you hearing about just the governance part of things globally?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it is interesting because there's the openness of it. And I've seen some stats also around, early education and how AI training is being introduced. And
Mhm.
actually these stats I haven't looked at, and it's probably been a year. And it was just embarrassing when you looked at American students and what they were being taught about AI versus,
Mm.
Germany or Japan or, different countries that are just they are embracing it and they're teaching people early how to use it and what does this mean. And I don't see America jumping in as quickly. And, with a 5.5-year-old daughter, I'm like,
Mhm.
he needs to learn about this stuff. And to
Yeah,
me, what does that mean? And she's 5.5, right? So what does that mean? Because she's not on a computer, she's not, doing anything like that. But to me, what that means to her is that she's got to question things. She's got to have
Mhm.
critical thinking. And when she's doing something, she needs to think about the outcome. A lot of working with AI is outcome based.
Right.
And to have that mindset of what is it that I'm trying to achieve, kind of let's
Mhm.
get to the core of this. What is this that we're doing? And let's drive towards that. And then AI, it's tools. It helps you get there. But
Right.
you need to understand at the heart of it, what are you getting towards? You need to critically question some of the things that perhaps you're being guided from AI, right? Because you're
Yeah.
jumping in and kind of supervising in a way, some of the AI work. So you need to be on top of those things. So critical thinking, the kind of logic flow and getting to the core of what it is you're trying to achieve are the things that at 5.5, I'm hoping to teach her and get her on that path. And that same thing, kind of chatting with folks about AI at the conference, and I was privileged to be on a few panels as well. And one of the panels was talking about, or at least my part of the panel was kind of talking about a seat at the table for AI as well. So kind of making sure that you have diversity of input into AI conversations. So that diversity of input can mean many things, but as a woman in technology, I'd like to not see, a group of men talking about how to use AI. I'd
Yeah.
like to see, some older folks, some younger folks, both from age and from experience. I'd like to see
Mhm.
people with different backgrounds, socioeconomic, ethnic, all these types of things. Those different
Right.
perspectives really do matter. I mean, we're talking in some cases about LLMs and information that AI is using that could be biased in different ways.
Yeah.
And, we need to kind of come in and make sure that we're using the stuff in a responsible way.
Mhm.
And because things move so quickly, it's also really easy to move quickly down a path that maybe isn't the right path that you want. So, I kind of look at that and say, who within your organization is making these decisions around AI? Are they bringing the
Mhm.
right people in? This isn't a
Mhm.
technology decision. This should be different groups talking together. So the governance and the decisions and the leadership, it should include HR. It should include technology. It should include a lot of different groups and make
Mhm.
sure that all those folks have voices. It's very important.
Well said, and so important, I think. Yeah. I mean, I've even noticed, I don't know if you've ever had talks with ChatGPT or Claude. Those are the two that I use, and I use them both, and they're quite different, honestly. But is just hold on, you're not a human being. You don't need to talk to me that way.
Yes.
And it came back and said, yeah, you're right. I probably shouldn't anthropomorphize myself to you exactly, but it's almost easy. And because my style and everyone's got a different style is collaborative. So I can easily fall into, the back and forth. That's the fun of it. We can even have discussions about certain kinds of philosophy or whatever. And it can, it's got access to a lot of things that I'm learning from. If I write an article and I want to quote three different authors from three different books or five different books, it'll pull the meat of what I wanted for my argument. And, I mean, all of this, it happens so quickly. And it's a deeply creative tool. The
Mhm.
process of it is very, very creative. So it's just that within that, you can see and I can start to feel the temptation on the part of, who's programming this, what kind of coding is going on, what are algorithms doing in there? I don't know.
Mhm.
There's a lot of questions, and whoever is really in charge of data obviously will hold a tremendous amount of power. Are you ever worried about that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And AI just changes how I worry about that, though. I worried
Yeah.
about it before, I
Mm-hmm.
worried about it with like, let's pick on Amazon for a minute,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
as as they started by, selling books for, I don't, they probably paid you to buy books back in the day, right?
Yeah.
They could get your information and kind of build an entire library of you and what you know and what you want, and just kind of went from there
Mm-hmm.
picking on Amazon, but that's the case with a lot of things where, you get a discount or you get this, and in return, well, just give me your email and your text is kind of how it started, right? Your mobile number
Right.
and whatnot. And then it builds into like they build this whole picture of who you are. And famously, gosh, it must be over 10 years now, but famously, there's someone at Target, a customer who Target identified that this person was pregnant, was expecting a child before the person even, before the person's family even knew, right? And
Oh,
it was like, well, that was, like years ago, right?
yeah.
Predictive, just kind of goes to show how you can get information like that. And that was so long ago. Imagine the things that you can do today and the picture that you can
Right.
build about people. So that's a lot of information.
It is. Yeah. And that gives me chills, even though it was that long ago.
Amazing
It
ways. I
feels,
mean, you think about healthcare, like, yeah, what if you could put those pieces together and use it to help people? That would be
yeah.
amazing. But
Well,
I do
see,
have
that's the
fears about it
thing.
getting put together just to drive stock value.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. The capacity for good is enormous, no doubt about it. So, without going too much into that rabbit hole, though, just a few words on what do you think we should do, or how do you think we should manage that edge? What the one we're talking about here. What can the individual do?
Yeah, I think, responsibility and accountability and how you can drive that may change based on who you are and what place you hold, whether in your organization or your community. But I think talking about it, I think I
Mm-hmm.
mentioned my 5-year-old daughter, and I think teaching them, because you need to teach others to kind of think critically and raise
Mm-hmm.
these questions. I think that's the biggest thing that you can do as an individual is to have those active conversations. Have them with your friends at book club, have them with your daughters and sons. Bring these questions to light.
Mm-hmm.
If you're talking or if you're on a board or wherever your influence is, whether it's a community center, whether it's a school, again, bring these things up, bring these questions up within your organization.
Mm-hmm.
Ask how they're doing that. Can be hard within your organization sometimes, right? So I'm mentioning a
Yeah.
lot of things that are more kind of societal as opposed to your professional trajectory because I think those matter as well.
Mm-hmm.
I, I think it's having the conversations and it's not being afraid to have the conversations. And it is a balanced one, as you said, right? Yeah, these tools, they can be used to great results. Like
Mm-hmm.
there could be amazing things that happen, and there could
Yeah.
also be awful things that happen. And so, we don't want to over-index on one or the other, but kind of look
Right.
at it holistically and say, hey, we have a global responsibility here that
Mm-hmm.
we should work together and we should use these tools in the right way. And when we see it not happening, you can call that out in different ways. Again,
Mm-hmm.
depending on if it's a local scale where you have the ability to kind of influence via conversation. If it's a larger one, sometimes you make your opinion known by voting or by, speaking to
Yeah.
your representatives and
Yeah.
whatnot. Um, I don't buy from Amazon. And so, you know,
Neither does my sister. I do. I do. I'm so hooked. I can't live without it. Sorry.
I get it.
I'm like, well, yeah, there's some justification that I go through in my mind, but the thing is they came up with the solution where they give you, a delivery is almost as soon as you need it, and I am quite hooked on that for the life that I live. It's an incredible freedom, really,
Oh, it is.
and makes people in different circumstances an ability to live in a certain way they never could have conceived of before. And that's kind of like AI, right? It's like it's so in that sense, I just want to appeal here and now to all of the programmers and owners of data centers, whatever you're doing out there with LLMs or whatever it is that let's always leave this conversation open. I love what you're talking about with the key conversations because I'm an Erickson coach. And I wanted to ask you, actually, as we wrap up, what kinds of coaching you've seen in the companies that you work with? How is it being used in corporations? Because, coaching is really, at least in the Erickson method, it's really about asking questions, about asking the right questions and letting that person tell you what it is they're thinking. It's all for the person that you're in the conversation with. There's no judgment. You're holding a space for someone to examine, to think critically about their own life or their own job or their own career or their own project. What would they like to do next? What are their goals? And let those answers just come up, bubble up sort of naturally through the dialogue process. And I think that's really the most human thing in the world, right? Is that we talk together. And like you and I are talking, things bubble up. They always do with us. But if you leave that space, it's really quite remarkable that humans have this ability to neurologically deep into recesses of the brain that we don't even fully understand yet. And I don't know about AI. They're not really doing, AI is doing what it was given to do. We still have untapped resources that we're not even fully aware of as human beings, but that's a chance for us to start using these parts of our brain and become as intelligent as we possibly could be by having those right conversations, right? So I'm really curious as to what you've seen with that process in the consulting that you've done.
Yeah, absolutely. And, well, I've seen it in a bunch of different ways. Transformational change is probably what stands out to me the most of where I've seen coaching come in. And, so a combination of change management and just a business transition or overhaul in some way is so big and scary to a lot of people.
Yeah.
You're worried about your job. You're worried about, what this change means. Is it going to be better? Is it going to be worse? You don't know. There's a lot of things going on. And it's also at the same time an opportunity where, things that maybe have been done a certain way for so long, maybe don't even remember how they're done anymore, or why they're done. I mean, in the first place. And it's a time to question those. And so you can look at it two ways. There's the fear part, and that's true and should be acknowledged. And there's also the ability that right now, this is the moment when you can make that change. And those are really hard conversations to have internally at an organization without a coach coming in and helping you. Understanding how to put some of those day-to-day things aside and really look at things differently. Coming in without the baggage, if you will, a coach who maybe doesn't know those things. And maybe when you tell them we do it this way, they say, tell me more about that. What would happen if you didn't do it that way? Or, kind of like leading someone through those conversations and helping them to think differently in a way that really can be difficult if you're, entrenched in it. And so I've seen just amazing things happen when those coaches come in and have conversations and people walk out kind of with their minds opened up and thinking, oh wow, it does bring that art of the possibility to the forefront a lot more to people, and that does help change you and help you index away from the fear portion and more towards the excitement portion of what's ahead and what could happen. And coaches can do that for you.
Well, thank you. That was a great sales job for coaches.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I think it's great. I really do. I think that's something that, and there's a lot we can say about that maybe another time. I was thinking it would be fun to do coaching demos for people so they can really see what that is like. before they actually go into a coaching session. So they know, because it's very intimidating, I think, to a lot of people to think of. And when you're in a corporation, you think whatever I say, they're going to remember and they're going to file it away somewhere and it could be used against me and all of that kind of thing. But that truly is not the purpose at all. And it is quite different. It's not therapy, it's not training, it's none of those things. It's really what you're talking about, which is opening up the space for an investigation of possibility. And it's to say you're free to think of the future separately. Just imagine whatever you want. What is it you'd really like to see happen? What
Mhm.
does this transformation mean to you? Why are you even thinking about this change anyway? What's the value of it for you? And as you ask those questions, the conversations that start to loosen up are leading into very innovative and unpredicted places that often you can look back and say, how did that happen?
Mhm.
I don't even know how that happened, and that's where I think it taps into this brain where we get out of our rut, really, literally, out of the rut of thinking and create new neural pathways to something more. And I just feel that right now humans really need that a lot. Don't you think, Carrie?
Yes. Yes, I do.
Yeah.
And just imagine, often, at least for me, I often think of coaching sessions as being around large transformations and being either, funded through that or the time, the
Mhm.
space that you mentioned being supported through that. And wouldn't it be amazing, though, if it were more common to have a little bit of coaching all the time and just able
Yes.
to do that more frequently and in pieces? And how much would your life change if you were able to experience that?
That's right. Well, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much. And I do want to invite you again soon to talk more about the technical side of what you do, because I think a lot of the people that listen would really know what you're talking about, even if I don't know 100% what you're talking about. But I would love to see how you go into a client and really break it down for us a little bit. What are the pieces? How do you put one of those projects together? Would you do that for me? Come back and tell me more about that?
I love it. Absolutely.
Okay.
Anytime.
All right. Well, take care. I'll see you again soon.
Yeah, thanks so much. This is great.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.